Hi, thanks for being with me today. Today I want to talk about something a little different, which is what we can do to make the world carbon negative while we still use oil and gas. You know, you hear a lot about climate, you hear politicians talking about how we need to sharply reduce our oil and gas use, maybe even cut it out altogether in some sort of dreamy world in 30 years. But the truth is, the carbon cycle, the cycling of carbon into the atmosphere and out of the atmosphere, is a complex cycle, and there's enormous potential to change that cycle to where more carbon is extracted from the air by photosynthesis and the action of soil microbes to sequester carbon into the soil and into plant matter, which can really change the carbon cycle, because currently we live in a world that is demineralized with bad agricultural practices on all levels that are increasing carbon emissions from the environment, nearly matching what man emits into the atmosphere each year. You know, we like to think that we're such a big fish in the pond, but the truth is the overall carbon cycle is far greater than man's emissions, and by tweaking the cycle and improving carbon sequestration, we can make the world carbon negative while we still use oil and natural gas. Now, we need to be more efficient, and the job gets easier if we're not wasteful, if we do things like choosing to be more efficient, increasing the efficiency of our homes, maybe buying a more efficient automobile. You know, this week I read an article in the Wall Street Journal comparing an electric car to a gasoline car. And if you have a fairly low mileage per gallon gasoline car, buying a Tesla actually cuts your carbon emissions nearly in half, because the Tesla is more efficient, and of course electric generation is somewhat done by non-carbon emitting sources. So there is this slight savings on carbon emissions after a number of miles goes by to recover the energy cost and the carbon emissions of all the mining that goes into making electric car batteries. But if they had chosen an efficient gasoline car like a Prius or one of the other hybrids that get really good gas mileage, the truth is it would have been a trade-off. There wouldn't have been a huge savings in carbon emissions from going to an electric vehicle and having all the limitations of an electric vehicle. And nobody talks about the enormous increase in electrical demand that would occur, much of it when solar power wouldn't be making any power, because people want to charge their car at night, or they want to charge their car during their lunch hour. And these times, morning charges, there's a need for an incredibly increased electric production and distribution to handle charging if we somehow moved to an electric car fleet and an electric truck fleet. But friends, we can solve the climate problem a lot faster by increasing carbon sequestration. And there's really 4 things we can do, or 5 things that we can do that really make a difference. One is to remineralize the Earth's soils, both in the forests, in the agricultural croplands, in the grazing lands, even in deserts, to restore deserts to health, and even in marine wetlands, which are huge sinks of carbon, and if treated better and restored to health, can alone sequester much of man's emissions, because those marine wetlands are so incredibly productive as far as sequestering carbon out of the air and putting it down into the muck. And we can do it, friends. But so first thing is we need to have an active remineralization program, ideally doing full spectrum remineralization using really high quality soil tests like done by the Kinsey Ag Company that test actual plant available nutrients in the soil so that we can add neglected elements up to boost it. But one of the best ways to remineralize is do it nature's way, which is to take basalt rock, which is full of all the different elements that are present in ocean water or human blood, which is a huge array of elements. And many of them are unknown as to how they interact with the incredible micro life and our lives. You know, friends, we're a population of billions of microorganisms inside our body, performing all sorts of tasks, many of which have never been identified because they're so numerous and mysterious. But we need to remineralize, and the best way to do that is with basalt rock, which is one of the most common rocks on earth. Grind it to powder and spread it on the earth, mix it in the soil, plant it with new trees to see sharply increased growth of 200 or 300% more productive growth, making that carbon just come zooming out of the air into long-lived material, which is a tree that can last, if it's healthy, can last for hundreds of years. So there's a lot we can do. The other thing we need to do is adopt the miracle technology that somehow came to the ancient Central American peoples, which is to make biochar. Now, biochar is an amazing product, but it's something you've seen in every campfire when you've burned it. Basically, it's wood or plant matter that's been partially burned so that all the volatile chemicals and all the hydrocarbons are burned out of the wood or the plant matter, leaving behind only pure carbon. And pure carbon is a miraculous compound in so many ways. We demonize carbon dioxide, but carbon itself is really the basis of life on Earth, and it has the fascinating quality of being a sponge for ionic nutrients of all kinds. So it attracts water-soluble and even insoluble elements to it, holding them firmly so that only a bacteria or a soil life can pry the nutrient off that carbon matrix. But what this does, friends, is serve as a sponge for water and nutrients, because the natural process is for leaching, for water to leach out good nutrients out of the soil so they go down the rivers and out into the ocean. You know, farmers lose half their fertilizer to water leaching, taking the nutrients off their farm. So if every farmer made biochar, and biochar was a major part of our carbon sequestration program, that's a permanent store of carbon removed from the carbon cycle, because biochar lasts forever, friends. It doesn't oxidize, it doesn't deteriorate, it can't be reduced by biological processes back into carbon dioxide. So it's taken carbon dioxide out of the environment totally, because a plant soaked up the carbon dioxide, making it into its carbon structure, and then by making it into biochar, it's a permanently removed from the environment store of carbon that has enormous benefits to mankind by improving soil productivity and minimizing the waste of fertilizer, solving the issue of toxic algae blooms in lakes and rivers and oceans, where the excess of nutrients trigger a dangerous bloom of algae that blocks sunlight and does big problems, hurting fish populations and other things. So friends, biochar. So we've got remineralizing, we've got biochar. Then a simple solution is to keep things growing on the soil for all of the growing time that a crop can grow on the land. Currently, farmers grow one crop a year and leave the soil bare for the bulk of the year. And even during the growing season, when the grain crop matures and stops growing, the soil then is not filled with living roots. Plants take carbon out of the air by the miracle of photosynthesis and turn it into carbohydrates. And nearly half of those carbohydrates, in many cases, go down into the plant roots to feed soil life in a healthy soil that then feeds the plant. So the soil serves as the plant's stomach in a healthy environment. Chemical farming results in the plant being kind of like you on candy or sugar. You get a quick burst of growth, but it's not healthy growth. It's not balanced growth. And the resulting food or grain is not a complete nutrition, which causes enormous harm to those that eat the plant, whether it be an animal or a person. And we have a real problem in this country with hidden hunger. So by growing green things on the land all the time, by planting a cover crop, by planting a companion crop that grows after the corn crop or soybean crop matures, we can really keep the soil sequestering carbon year round and make a huge difference in the carbon emissions. You know, the climate activists never like to talk about how carbon dioxide levels go up and down each year, rising when the crops and the plants are not growing in the northern hemisphere, and then declining pretty dramatically in the summer during peak growing time when those big corn crops and soybean crops and other grain crops are just sucking up tons of carbon dioxide. You know, a corn plant grows so fast you can almost see it growing. If you just look at it day to day, it's just taller every day because it's putting so much carbon dioxide out of the air into the plant. So friends, cover crops, the third way we can really make a difference, can make a huge difference in the level of carbon dioxide in the air, and it improves the soil, and most importantly, it cuts soil erosion by having living plants holding the soil in place and actually building soil through the life of microorganisms in the soil and the root mass that then rots down into organic matter. So we can make a real difference if we change our ways from conventional chemical agriculture to what's called regenerative agriculture. And you can look that up on the web and learn lots more about it. But friends, if we do regenerative agriculture, if we grow those cover crops, if we do polyculture, growing more than one crop at once to have a continuing photosynthesis on the soil, we can make a real difference. The fourth thing is to implement and strongly encourage what's called holistic grazing, where instead of cattle staying in a pasture for months at a time and just selectively over harvesting the desirable grasses and leaving undesirable grasses and weeds, if you graze the cattle intensively for a very short period of time and then move them to a new pasture area, the grass gets a chance to regrow for a month. And if you don't take all of the crop grass mass off, if you only take half of the growing material, the leaves off the grass keeps growing and feeding the soil and preventing that horrible breakdown where the soil roots rot back to pull nutrients out of the roots to regrow the top of the grass and not feeding the soil life. So there's carbon emissions from that process. So friends, We need to graze holistically. We don't need to graze the grass during the growing season dramatically down. Take a little off, move the cattle, increases the carrying capacity. Friends, we need more cattle, not less, but we need them managed holistically so that the cows turn into carbon sequestering animals, increasing the quality and vigor of the forage, because grass dies out without proper grazing. But either overgrazing, as some farmers and ranchers do, or not grazing at all, really damages the quality of the grass crop. Grass and cattle were designed to work together. Grass is designed to be eaten selectively and allowed to recover. It's a miraculous plant that covers so much of the earth. So people that talk about doing away with cattle or minimizing cattle or going to fake meat really misunderstand the vital role that cattle play in a healthy ecosystem. You can see videos by Alan Savory on YouTube that really drive home the point that holistic grazing can restore depleted pastures to health and really be a big component of making the world carbon negative while we still use oil and gas and while you still eat good beef. So we need to be eating more beef, but it needs to be more grass-fed, more derived from the natural cycle of a cow grazing good pasture and producing top quality meat as opposed to fat-laden and nutrient-deficient meat from some feedlot operations. The last thing that we need to do is to sharply reduce, if not phase out, coal burning for power. We need to shift away from coal burning as fast as possible. And the Get Real Alliance is humane and practical. And what we need to do is go ahead and buy the coal companies up using funds from a carbon sequestration tax, using a very small percentage of that revenue to buy the coal companies, give them some compensation for taking them off the market, and pay the workers retraining fees and encourage industry to move into those areas to give them good, sustainable jobs and fund their pensions, which are currently underfunded. There's a strong political lobby by the coal unions to try to preserve coal so that all their workers can still have a future and have a retirement. So friends, we need to be compassionate. These people have been doing hard, honest work. Yes, it has been polluting the environment and it's not needed anymore. We have plenty of natural gas to replace all the coal and operate sustainably. We can move forward in a different direction with renewable energy. We need to be doing massive amounts of renewable biogas, which is methane produced by biologic processes, anaerobic bacteria, naturally occurring, and we can make tons of biogas from plant waste, from garbage, from sewage, from animal waste, if we make that a priority. But one of the things we've got to do as a people is let our fellow man make a living and not always be in the mode of thinking we need things to be as cheap as they can be. Right now you hear people saying that solar photovoltaic is one of the cheapest sources of electricity, but nobody looks at the real cost to actually have reliable 24/7 power would require many, many times more solar panels to charge a huge number of batteries. Battery advocates love to talk about a battery providing power for 5,000 homes, but they don't emphasize that's only for 2 hours. What happens if you want power around the clock? That means you need 10 times more batteries. If you want to have power for a couple of days, it might mean 20 or 30 times more batteries and 20 or 30 times more solar panels to recharge those batteries, because solar panels only make power at a high rate for a couple of hours a day. So you need a massive increase. So the costs go up exponentially to a huge number from this, quote, cheap electricity that people say a solar PV panel can produce, but it doesn't provide power for when you want it. In the morning when you get up and want to take a shower, fix your food, and do things around the house. And it certainly doesn't provide power in the evening when you get home from work and you want to turn on the TV and cook food in the microwave or the oven or on a stove. If we go all electric, of course, the electric demand goes up dramatically. If you have all electric water heaters, dramatic increase in electric use. So when people talk about getting rid of natural gas and going all electric, they're really not thinking clearly. They're not being realistic. They're being myopic. But if we get efficient, if we get real about energy, about the soil, we can make the world carbon negative, friends. The other thing that we need to do is restore forest to health by remineralizing, by adding biochar, but also replanting and removing dead wood from the forests and making that dead wood into biochar instead of it rotting or burning back into the atmosphere, releasing all that carbon dioxide. We can sequester it in the soil permanently and enhance the soil dramatically and enhance the woods. I'd love to see America's forests be lush and green, so green and lush that they can't catch on fire and burn. If we remove the dead wood from the forest, remove the dead and dying trees, plant disease and insect-resistant trees. And friends, if we add basalt rock dust to the seedlings, we can increase their vigor dramatically and add growth to sequester more carbon and long life to keep that carbon in a green living tree for generations, not just a few years before it gets sick and is attacked by insects and disease. So we can make a difference, friend. We can make the world carbon negative while we still use oil and gas. If we attack all 5 approaches with a comprehensive program, and I lay this out in my book. It's on our website, getrealliance.org. I hope you will go to it and sign up for our newsletter. Even better, become a monthly donor. Even a $5 or $10 a month donation makes a big difference. It's a pat on our back saying, I like your program. I like what you're proposing. I think this is what the Lord wants us to do, to be good stewards of the land, to restore it to health, to restore the food to health, where your food is nutritious and satisfying and you don't feel compelled to overeat, trying to get nutrition from demineralized, nutrient-deprived food. So we can do it, friends, but it takes a little time. It costs a little more. We've got to pay our farmers better. We can't have farmers starving or having to go out and get second jobs to support their family because our society doesn't pay farmers fairly. There's a lot we can do, and we can talk about a lot in future shows. I hope you will go to our website, read the information on it, and say, I like this program. I'm going to sign up for the newsletter. I'm going to be a monthly donor. I'm going to help spread the word that there is a positive solution to the climate issue that doesn't focus on cutting carbon emissions, but focuses on increasing carbon sequestration. Because, friends, there are many needs that oil and natural gas provide that really can't easily be provided by other means. And we need to continue that. Now, we need to make it cool to be a low carbon footprint person, but one of the ways we can do that is to give people hope by telling the good news that there is a way to solve this climate crisis. in not many years, maybe 10 or 15 years of aggressive action, America has so much potential that it could be carbon negative in 5 years with our carbon sequestration program if it was fully implemented, with improvements going forward as we remineralize more acres, treat the soil better. But friends, I need your help to share the good news and to support us so that we can bring more people to our website, gain subscribers, and gain political mass so that we can change the politics of climate from a disastrous path of energy shortages and a lower quality of life and sharply restricted travel, people talking about horrible dietary restrictions, so many adverse circumstances that some of these awfulizing climate activists like to talk about, instead of talking about the positive news, which is that the soil can do it, the soil in the marine wetlands, on the land, in the forest, in the grasslands, in the croplands, it can all work to suck up that carbon dioxide through increased photosynthesis if we activate the Get Real Alliance carbon sequestration program. So tune in, soak up the information, and get active, get involved. Be sure to sign up and say you'd like to get our book that's going to be out in a couple of months, getting powerfully rewritten to be stronger and more effective. And friends, we can do it if we follow the Lord's commandment to love our neighbors ourselves, which means to be generous with the providers of food, to take care of our farmers, and more importantly, to do as God said, to be good stewards of the world by preserving the soil, minimizing soil erosion, increasing forestation, decreasing deserts. We need to fight deserts. There are timid programs being done to corral the Sahara Desert, but friends, it needs more funds, and the Get Real Alliance is all about creating those funds through an affordable carbon tax that goes to fund all the things I've talked about and more. So may you have a blessed day, and may you have peace in your heart, which is God's gift to us, by knowing that everything's going to be all right if we really love our neighbors ourselves and adopt a plan to make the world a harmonious and better place in the environment and socially. We could do it, friends, but it doesn't involve subsidizing faulty technology like solar photovoltaic. It involves replacing coal with clean burning natural gas, and we can do it, friends, with your help. Take care, and may you have a blessed day.